Hello, everyone. My name is Donnie Montague, and I'm here with my husband, Gary Montague.
Hello, everyone.
And we are thrilled to bring you this special meeting today with artist Steve Klein. Montague Gallery is currently exhibiting a solo show with Steve. It's called Between the Lines Beneath the Surface. And during the next hour, we're going to learn about Steve and his work. We're going to do a walkthrough of the show, so we'll have the opportunity to hear from Steve as we have a chance to look at the various pieces within the show. And we had planned to do a studio tour with you today in Steve's studio, and about an hour and a half ago, he lost Wi-Fi. It was an outage in his neighborhood where his studio is. So he called an audible. He recorded a video that we are trying to upload right now, and we hopefully will be able to show you that. And obviously we have the real deal, Mr. Steve Klein. So that's the most important thing. So we'll hear about his process regardless of how our studio tour turns out. And Steve also has another really exciting event on the horizon. He is opening a major exhibition tomorrow at the Museum of Northwest Art. So you'll hear about that as well. We will take questions along the way. We're going to ask you to please ask questions through the chat function. And we're asking you to all please make sure that you're muted. You should all be muted. And I think with that, I guess I want to tell you a little bit about Steve, and then I'm going to ask him to talk a little bit more. It's our pleasure to welcome Steve Klein today. He lives in Washington State, north of Seattle, in a little town called La Conner. Steve is originally from Los Angeles, and he spent a significant portion of his adult life in sales and management within the industrial parts and supplies arena. And then at age 50 in 1996, he took a sharp turn and decided that he was going to move towards a completely different professional life when he began the journey to become a glass artist. So Steve, welcome. We're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Donnie, and I'm really happy to be here and happy to be showing at Montague Gallery, and really happy to see some old friends here on Zoom.
Thank you, Steve. You know, Steve, I guess just to get started, why don't you tell us a little bit more about how you became a glass artist and why you decided to pursue this particular path and end up changing your life in such a dramatic way?
Well, it was a dramatic change, but certainly I worked for 25 years in industrial sales, and I really have to admit I never totally enjoyed the work or the product. It was a job. It wasn't fun getting up every morning. And by chance, I was in Washington, and visiting a friend, and he had a brochure sitting on a table from Pilchuck Glass School, and I picked it up and asked him what it is, and he told me, you know, a bunch of people up in the woods making glass. And anyways, I took the brochure home. It was a time in my life when it was like, I need a new obsession in my life. And I applied for a class. I got in, surprisingly, with no artist statement, no art background at all. And I had a sand casting class with Paula Bartran from Sweden. I was completely taken with the whole experience. I had never been around artists before. Well, I had been around some artists, but never really lived with artists. And it was a completely different way of thinking about things. And I totally enjoyed it. You know, there was a freedom to just be whatever you want to be, not have to please anybody but yourself. And I really enjoyed that. And came home, and my head was not the same as when as it was when I left. And kept telling my wife, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this work because this other thing is nagging at me. And I started a little bit of a studio in our garage, and eventually decided, well, I want to learn to be a glass blower. And I found a studio, and a nice guy by the name of Kent Kalin in Orange County. And he let me come in and sweep the floors and open doors for him, etc. And I started blowing glass, and I thought that was really fun. It was physical, and but it was too quick. It was too quick to finish something. I didn't have time to really think about it. And I discovered fusing. And it was like a whole world opened up because I could take an hour, a day, a week, a month, a year to make something. And I really liked that. Going back, my history growing up, my dad was an electrician, but he loved art all the time, and he was always fiddling with different things. But we always had art books in the house, and those were the books that were setting out, so we'd always be looking at them. And I had a real fondness for the abstract expressionists, for the Russian constructivists. I really liked that kind of art, and that's how it all started. And it's just, I honestly think it's grown almost every day. Something new happens because I'm in the studio every day, and I love it. There's not a day I don't enjoy going to the studio.
What a story.
Maybe more than you wanted to hear.
No, I think it's fantastic. A couple of things just immediately come to mind. One is it's interesting that the speed of making the art, whether it's glass blowing and how you had a very limited time to do that versus when you discovered fusing, and really that was such a big attraction to be able to take your time, whether it's a few hours or a day or week or year. So that's fascinating. That certainly has an impact on the end result.
Yeah, and the material itself. I mean, when light shines through glass, something absolutely magic happens. It has for me from day one, and it still happens when the light comes through. That to me, I think it's a reflection of optimism, of hope. It's all good when that light comes through, and I love the material.
Yeah, it's very special material. It's interesting to think about how the light comes through your work, because you have, your work has an opaque quality, right? Which doesn't reflect and light doesn't go through in the same way, but you've definitely got transparent properties in there as well.
Yes.
So,
yes. And, things that come to us in life don't always come right through. And I think that was one of the reasons the title Between the Lines. I think we have to, in life, we look between things to find hope, to find gratitude, to find optimism. We have to look for that. It doesn't just blow up in our face. And that's what Between the Lines is for me. That when that light comes through, it illuminates something, and I think it's something different for everybody.
Right. I love that sense of optimism in the title. What about beneath the surface? So the name of our show is Between the Lines, Beneath the Surface. How does that part come in, Steve?
Yeah, well, that's the Discovery series. And I have to thank COVID. That's that's an oxymoron, I guess. But because of COVID, everything kind of ground to a halt, and particularly making gallery work because galleries weren't open. So I was looking for something else to do rather than just stacking up work. And I know a few artists that have played around with powder. I've looked at it over the years, and I decided to work more like, I guess, more like a painter works, and see what I can find out. And I started with little tiny jars of powder, and ended up with hundreds of pounds of powder. But I start with a piece of clear glass on the bottom, and then I just start laying glass powders on and putting them in the kiln and fusing them at a very low temperature so that they maintain the structure of powder. They don't melt, release tension and melt. It was very interesting because if I laid powder down and there was something I didn't like, I could go over it, which I haven't been able to do. I mean, that's what painters do when they see something they don't like, they go over it or they enhance it. And I could do all this. I could put these pieces back in the kiln as many times as I want and make changes every single time. In that process, I noticed that things were happening underneath because I wasn't able to, I didn't grind what was underneath away. I just went over it, and different things started to come out. And eventually I was able to use those, what was underneath as part of the composition, whether it be shape or lines or whatever, it became part of the composition. So it really started building in layers. And that's why I say none of the pieces that you have in the exhibit or that I've made there are simply one layer. There's something beneath the surface on all of them. They started one way, ended up another way.
Mm-hmm. Do they come out the way you ultimately anticipate them? Do you have a vision for an end result and you work towards it, or do you sort of are you in a partnership, so to speak, with the with the process, and as it gives you information, then it changes how do you do that?
Yeah, well, there's definitely a partnership between myself and the material and the process. And yes, it sort of comes out like I want it, but I think glass, and I see some people on here that work with glass, we all know glass is going to have its word. Yeah. Glass is going to speak, and whether it's affected by heat or viscosity or whatever, there's always going to be some surprises. And really, that's fair. I mean, the glass is a companion. It's part of the process and part of the piece.
And I think those surprises are one of the wonderful things about the material, as you try and work with it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we are going to then go ahead and do a walkthrough. This is sort of an overall view of the beautiful work that Steve has designed and created. And we're going to start right here with this shelter piece. And Steve, do you want to tell us about this?
Sure. These pieces, I call them shelter, and I number them. I don't title pieces. I just work in series. The shelter series started, I don't know, about 10, 11 years ago when I actually saw this round stone enclosure in Scotland. It was called a fank, and it was the purpose was to shelter sheep from the elements. And I was just totally taken with the simplicity of the shape. And for me, it's become a vehicle for expressing different ideas or looking at different artists or whatever. This piece in particular was really inspired when I started working with some environmental issues and started looking at coral reefs. And that's basically what has inspired this piece with the coloration, et cetera. And you can see again with the look going around the piece, light comes through the lines there. And that's one of the things I really like about this series. Good shot, Donnie. Yeah, one of the things I really do like about this series, as you go around the pieces, light comes out and so it changes all the time.
Yeah, the way you play with light is really special. And you can see the light coming through as well in the green sections in a very different way than it's coming through in other parts of the piece.
We do have one question on the chat, and it's really about how you ultimately shape these panels. And the question specifically, how do they become perfect circles? But I think you're doing a similar process for a lot of your formed works.
Yes. For the shelter pieces, I have some stainless steel molds that are half circles. Basically, the pieces are made flat. Then they're sandblasted, and then they're usually textured with a diamond wheel to get that really sumptuous surface. And then they're placed on top of the mold, which is flat. They're laying flat, and I bring them up very, very slowly to a low temperature, and they will just form right over the mold. I hope that answers the question.
And we're coming over here to the first exploration piece.
Yeah, well, the exploration really is my oldest series. I made the first one in 1999, and I'm up to, they're just numbered. I'm up to about close to 200 or maybe even over 200. Anyways, most of these pieces are inspired by painters and paintings. The three that are, or no, two of them or two or three of them that are in this exhibit are inspired by the Russian constructivists who, you know, I really admire, particularly Kazimir Malevich and L. Lisitsky. And, you know, their way of painting was they distilled propaganda in an industrialized assemblages rather than doing something decorative or narrative. And I think it was a way of staying out of trouble. But I've always found their paintings to be very, very exciting. And I constantly question why lines are going certain ways or not going certain ways. And there's always a very awkward balance, which really is attractive to me. This is the first piece where I've used multiple spheres. If you're familiar with my work, normally these exploration pieces have one sphere. And this time I put multiple spheres in, and I used a round object in the construction of the base piece. And they're called exploration because basically I'm exploring ideas of usually different painters, and I consider it a conversation that I'm having with the material, with another painter, with what's going on in my head. And hopefully at some point we all get together. And I've always looked at these pieces, they've always also been about relationship. The spheres by themselves are just a bunch of round balls, they're glass balls. The base plate by itself is a curvy base plate, but for me, when I put them together, there's a harmony that forms in the relationship, and that's really what I'm looking for.
Terrific.
And Steve, with those the spheres, are those also formed using that
They're
casting
blown.
process, or is there a different
No,
technique for those?
those are blown. The technique is called a roll-up, where I will make the glass piece first in a rectangle, usually in a rectangular shape. And then I go into the hot shop. I work with a glass blower in Southern California. I've been working with him for over 15 years. And he's a really good glass blower, and I'm a really good assistant. And we roll the form that I make up onto a pipe, and he blows it into a sphere.
So let's move to the first in the Discovery series here. This is a diptych, your first diptych within...
My first diptych ever, yes. And boy, that was so much fun. It was, and I wish you could see the texture in this, because I think the texture is very, very exciting. And there are a lot of layers on these pieces. I think they've been through about 4 different firings. And again, it was interesting doing a diptych and trying to get these 2 pieces to communicate and still maintain an individual persona beyond their own, but still communicate with the other one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we're going to move over to 2 more exploration pieces.
Okay, and these 2 were based on paintings by Hans Hofmann. He was a German painter that emigrated to the U.S. and taught painting in New York. Many painters in the 50s, 60s, 70s were students of his. And he just had a way of using color to express what he felt and what he was seeing. And when I moved to the Northwest about 16 years ago, a lot more color started coming into my life. All of a sudden, I was living with color instead of more of a monochromatic environment in Southern California. And when I looked at Hoffman's paintings, they seem to celebrate life with color. And that's what this series for me was, a celebration of my life in the Northwest, of springtime, of the flowers, of everything around me, the beautiful skies. Where we live in La Conner, we have the Tulip Festival, and we've got a lot of tulip fields here, and they all serve for inspiration.
Also, just so everyone knows, these 2 pieces are smaller in size than the other exploration pieces. So that's, I think, important to note. And Steve, you can, the texture on Steve's work is just marvelous. And you can see, I hope, a little bit of the lines, for instance, that are on the sphere. There's a very soft feeling if you've never had an opportunity to touch Steve's work, but there's texture there, and it's a wonderful experience. The tactile experience.
All of the exploration pieces in particular are built with strips of glass. They're not just flat pieces of glass that I've cut up. They're strips of glass. So in either one of these, I would estimate there's 700 to 1,000 pieces of glass in every one of these. And
wow.
There's, but for me, there's a certain calmness during the rigor of cutting all those strips, knowing that it's going to come out with that there'll be a variegation in size. It's not just in the surface. It's not just a flat, glassy surface.
And now we're going to move over to some more discovery pieces that we have.
Right. The first one on the left was, it was inspired. I have several books about Richard Diebenkorn on my bookshelf, and I look at them a lot. And that was inspired by some of Diebenkorn's work.
These black pieces, the texture on them, again, it's a little hard, but maybe you can see the texture coming through is really wonderful.
Yeah, again, it's discovery. It's finding out ways. Some of it's been accidental, some of it's been intentional. How to create the textures on the surface and what temperatures to melt them at, etc., and how color will come through or not come through.
Mm-hmm. And then this is another beautiful example of an exploration piece.
Yeah. This was based on a painting by Kazimir Malevich.
Mm-hmm. As bold as these colors may look on video, of course, as you can imagine, if you were seeing them in person, it's even more so. And here are two more discovery pieces. I think this one also, in terms of beneath the surface, there is a lot going on with this piece.
A lot of changes along the way.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think when I look at these pieces, it's a nice history of what went on in the process.
Mm-hmm. Another beautiful exploration.
Yeah, and I think this is a really good example of different colors that seem to work in different shapes, different lines, and how it all comes. I mean, for me, it comes together as a composition, but there's such strange bedfellows that have been put together here.
And you've told me this is one of your very favorite pieces, right?
That one is one of my
favorite explorations.
It is absolutely one of my favorite pieces. It was actually the first sphere that I made with the lines not going straight up and down.
Mm.
And it presented a whole new challenge to making the exploration, to making the piece and having it all work, getting different angles going on there.
Mm-hmm. Lovely. And then our last piece is a shelter, which Steve just finished. I said to him yesterday, it's so new, I think it's still warm.
Well, it practically is still warm. I think I finished it, maybe 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
This was, for the past 2 years, I've also been working on an exhibit that's opening at the Museum of Northwest Art tomorrow, as a matter of fact. There are 60 pieces of glass in the exhibit, and the exhibit's called A Precarious Edge, and it's a personal statement about our environment and the edge that we're sitting on now as to whether or not what our generation is doing to the environment will best serve future generations, and whether future generations will see the same beauty that we've been able to enjoy in the environment. But in making those pieces, I did a lot of work with sunrises and sunsets and the sky. And while I was working with them, the idea came up for this piece, and it really lent itself to lines going in a lot of different directions. The glow on this piece is fantastic, having black on the exterior, white on the interior, lines coming through. To me, there's so much going on in this piece, and it was really a fun piece to make. Mm-hmm. And I used a lot more angles in this piece than I've normally used.
It's beautiful. Definitely, for me, evokes sunrise and sunset.
Yeah.
Okay, that is our show.
And it does look like the video tour of your studio is available, Steve. So it did make it through while we were online here.
Okay.
You're up.
Okay, well, all right. Well, this is my studio. Sitting out in the middle of hundreds of acres of farmland. I rent this building, and you can see I'm just surrounded by beauty all the time. We did have a surprise snowstorm yesterday, and that's what's left of it. So we're going into the studio now, and so this work table here is pretty much full of work that's from the museum show. It's basically, this is how I work. I do a lot of drawing. And then when I'm finished with that, I do a lot more drawing. And I make a lot of samples and do a tremendous amount of testing of ideas and colors. And I think that's one of the things I really love about fusing is I've got the liberty to do all this. It's not instantaneous. Sometimes, as you can see there on the right, accidents happen. And that was an accident. A piece broke in the kiln. This is my large kiln. And oh, there was a mold in the kiln of that's used for the shelter pieces. I know we went by it quickly. I use bullseye sheet. There it is. There's the mold that I use for the shelter pieces. And I do have two of them, so I can do two at a time. All right. So we're coming on to my main work table and area. Right now it's set up. Okay, this is the sheet glass I use. I use bullseye glass. It's made in Portland, Oregon. I think it's just, it's beautiful glass. Great when it's cold work. This is my main work area. Most of the machines around this table are all use diamond wheels, flat laps, whatever. That's how we work and make edges on glass. This is a silk screen from the trees that are in the museum exhibit. And this is my station where I've set up to do the silk screening for more discovery pieces, which now that the museum show's open, that's what I'm going to start doing is working on the discovery pieces. There I'm doing a pirouette into my little office here. And I really like this space. There are a lot of test pieces. There are some finished pieces in here, old pieces, new pieces, but it gives me a chance to look at what I'm working on and making it in. Anyways, I think that's about the end. Thanks for visiting.
Bravo, that was a great tour. Amidst some very challenging circumstances, Steve. So thank you. Thank you for making it happen one way or another.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Tell us a little bit more about the museum show. And it's a big show, and I know there's in terms of the purpose and you know, thinking about climate and environmental issues and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I can. The show is with an incredible painter, Meg Holgate, who also lives in LaConner. Meg and I have been friends for a long time, probably 15, 18 years. We admire each other's work. And when the opportunity came to us, the director at the time at Mona, Joanna Sykes, asked us, hey, would you guys like to do a show? And this was probably 3.5 years ago. And we said, sure, that would be great. We started thinking about it. And I think partly because of where we live and how we live, it seemed like the right thing to do to look at nature. And as we started looking closer at nature, we both said, you know what? We really need to comment on the state of the environment, what's happening in the environment. And the name A Precarious Edge really came up almost instantaneously, I'd say 2.5 years ago. And that's kind of been our focus of of the show. We wanted to make beautiful work, which I think we did. Meg's an incredible painter. I think glass is beautiful. We actually collaborated on a piece, which was a lot of fun. And to just make a statement that the beauty is here, but the beauty is a facade really for what's beneath that beauty, and that's essential to life on Earth. Without getting political and going into a bunch of details, we focused on glaciers and icebergs, oceans, forests, and air. And the museum show is divided into those areas. I think the museum will be posting images from the exhibit. It's the Museum of Northwest Art, LaConner, Washington.
And how long is the show?
The show
running?
Is up until May 15th. It opens tomorrow and it's up until May 15th.
And you have a tremendous amount of work in this show.
60 pieces of glass.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if you get the opportunity and you're in the Seattle area, highly recommend you drive a little further north and see that show.
I can actually show a couple of things that are on the website currently, but they don't have the whole show up. But just to give you an idea, because it is a different mix, both for Steve and some interesting work from his collaborator here. Just show this quickly. And these are some of the silk screen works that you were showing.
Exactly,
process, yeah. Right? We don't have any of those in the gallery currently. And then, so you've got
they're all
images
in the museum.
On, yeah.
Yeah.
Another shelter. Some reds and yellows, forest fire, glacier. I have an interesting set of things in there, Steve and Meg.
Yeah.
So congratulations on that show, Steve. That I know there was just a tremendous amount of time and effort that you put into conceiving and developing that show, and it's exciting to see.
It is
that
exciting.
It's come to fruition.
Yeah. Thank you. And the venue's terrific. It was we spent about a week and a half setting up the exhibit, and I see John is on. John's the head docent at the museum, and I think they just finished the docent tour. So, we're looking forward to the public starting to come in tomorrow. And like I said, Meg and I believe deeply in the message that we're sending, and I hope some people walk away from the show questioning what their contribution is to the environment now and what it will be in the future. Are we going to leave the planet better for future generations?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great. So we are at a point now where if any of you have questions, please put that in chat. Otherwise, I just want to ask you a couple things, Steve. Tell us now, you're at an interesting point right now because you've been very focused on the museum exhibition and getting that going. And, you've had this show with us, and you're pursuing a new series of work now with Discovery. So I'm curious, now that maybe you can take a minute to rest after all of this. What are you excited about right now? And what are you sort of, when you're looking forward with your work, what are you thinking about?
Well, it is an interesting time, and I'm looking forward to just sitting back and thinking and working more on the Discovery series. And I'm a trustee at Pilchuck Glass School, and I chair a committee that is focused on the environment, and we're looking at doing environmental assessments at Pilchuck, and making Pilchuck a leader in the, as far as glass, the entire industry of blowing glass and fusing and casting amongst the schools. And I'm excited about that opportunity that we can look at all of our environmental issues there, from buildings to machinery to process to how students live on campus. So that's going to be pretty exciting. It's going to be an ongoing thing. And work-wise, it's going to be the Discovery Series right now. I feel like there's so much I can learn and discover with this particular process. I really feel like I've just scratched the surface. I'm working in one size, a 17 by 20 or 21. And I know, and they're rectangles, and I know they can be expanded. I can make bigger pieces. They can come in different shapes. I can put more glass on. I can probably curve them and create some interesting reflections coming through onto walls. So I don't know where it's going, but I'm sure it's going to be a lot of fun finding out.
You know, I was thinking earlier, and I meant to say it, that, you know, there are a lot of things that we can be grateful to Pilchuck for. They've done so much for the glass community and the glass world, but you are one of the big things that we can be grateful to Pilchuck for, and how you started out there.
Absolutely.
There's a question about the small explorations that I mentioned and what the dimensions are. So those are 15 by 15, 5 inches high, 15 by 15 wide. And if you are interested, which we hope you are, please go on to our MontagueGallery.com website. You will see on the homepage a link to this show, and you will see images, information on all of the work here. So any questions you have about the work, you'll see information there, and then obviously we will be happy to talk with you about that. The show is going through March 5th, and if you are in the San Francisco Bay Area, I highly encourage you to come in to see it in person, because it makes such a difference to see the work that way.
Great.
All right. Well,
okay. Well, thank you to everybody that listened.
Steve, oh, you know, Steve, we did get a question that is, I think, a great one. Someone is asking if the spheres are fused to the bases. And I actually wanted you to talk about that, because also, you know, maybe talk about how you want people to experience them, you know, and how they might place the work.
Well, they are not fused to the bases, and that's intentional, because I've always believed that we all see balance differently, and that sphere can be placed in a lot of different positions on the base plate, and with the hole going in a lot of different directions. And again, the genesis of the series is relationship, and how one completes the relationship between the sphere and the base plate really is up to the individual. I mean, when I'm making it, I see it one way, but I'm always excited when I walk into a gallery, or if I've been in a collector's home, to see how they've placed it, because I can tell you, everyone sees it differently. And I like that. I like the fact that people can touch the work and move it and make it their own.
It's also on the sphere is on a little rubber ring, and so that's how it is kept safe on the base plate.
Yes.
So.
And I do suggest a little bit of museum wax when you decide where you want it.
And I think the exploration pieces are a great example of how there's so much to them in terms of their intention and their meaning. And, until you have an opportunity to talk to the artist and understand what's behind the creation, you really don't know about the depth that's there. And I think experiencing these pieces completely changes. And as wonderful as it is to just look at the pieces, once you understand so much more about it, it goes a whole nother level. So Steve, once again, we want to thank you for being here today, and everyone, we want to thank you for joining us today. And as I said, the show will run through Saturday, March 5th. We hope you take a look at the work. It's just incredible, as you have seen, and we're here if you have any questions or if you have any interest in anything. So with that, we wish you a wonderful weekend, and thanks again for being with us.
Okay, and thank you, Donnie and Gary, for showing my work and your support, and thanks everybody for listening. And I hope to see many of you this year.
In person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Steve. Thanks, everyone.